If you're a parent looking for a way to help your child to read before they start school, then you've come to the right place. Welcome back to my Learning to Read series. This is part 2. Today, we're talking about the importance of spoken language as a key foundational layer in learning to read. If you haven't seen my first video yet, which goes through all of the skills as a bit of an overview, then I'd recommend going back and watching that first before you come here. I love talking about the importance of spoken language as it's a really easy skill for parents to work on with their kids. And we often don't give enough credit to why speaking is so important before learning to read. Now, before I dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the other videos in this series when they drop. I'm going to be going through all of these skills so that you can develop your own understanding of all of the skills that a child needs when it comes to learning to read. So let's do it. Spoken language, technically termed oral language, is the ability to communicate effectively with others through speech. It's being able to understand what somebody is saying to you and being able to produce words effectively and clearly so that somebody else can understand what you're saying. It's knowing what individual words mean and how to use them correctly. If you pause and think about it, how many words did your child say today? Our language is made up of individual sounds that we put together to make words. We then put these words together in a particular order to make sentences to be able to communicate a complete thought. Being able to speak is the first step in demonstrating an understanding of how our language works. Spoken language is what we call a biologically primary skill. This means that most humans learn to be able to do this on their own without being taught. Generally speaking, you don't need to teach your child how to talk. Most of them will do this on their own. And if they are not talking and following those typical language development milestones, then that might be a flag to you that they may need a little extra help in this area because it may not be developing as naturally as it should be. Some typical language milestones in toddlerhood are: by 18 months, toddlers should have about 6 to 20 words. By 2 years old, they should have about 50 words, and they should be able to put at least 2 words together to say short sentences. By 3 years old, their sentences should become longer, and they should also be asking questions. Now, if your child is older than this, don't panic. These are guidelines, not deadlines. Anecdotally, with my 2 kids, I've noticed that between the ages of 18 months and 2 years, there's this huge language explosion. They really transition out from being a baby to developing into a true toddler with tantrums and all the rest. They just start demanding things. Toddler tantrums can really boil down to the fact that they're not able to communicate what they need or they want. As your child learns to speak more, you can see that these tantrums tend to reduce in their extremity. And once you realize that, it really changes how you respond to them. Now, if this is sounding like a lot to remember, I've popped all of this into a downloadable cheat sheet for you. You can keep it on your fridge or on your phone. It's just a really useful reference. I've got it linked in the description. So this is a really key indicator in learning to read success. Having a really strong oral language helps kids to become successful readers later on. Spoken language is also a really key indicator to know how your child is developing, to see if they need any extra help in this area. Early intervention is always key and can make a huge difference. When kids can speak, we then can build on this understanding to teach them how to read. Now, remember how I said that oral language is a biologically primary skill? Well, reading is a biologically secondary skill, which means it's not something that our brains will just pick up naturally. It's something that we need to teach them explicitly. Our brains are naturally designed to be able to pick up speech sounds and produce words, but our brains have not yet evolved to be able to just read those squiggles on the paper. We need to train our brains to be able to do that. Now, there's a specific area in the brain called the visual word form area that lights up on MRI scans in people's brains when they're reading. This is a specific area of the brain that we have manipulated to be able to have the ability to read. This part of the brain helps us to be able to identify little black marks on a page and convert them into something that actually carries meaning. But we can't just do that innately or magically or just learn it over time through osmosis. We need to train our brains to be able to do that. And to do that, we start with the ability to speak, which is something our brains can do naturally. And then we start to map on those sounds that we've learned through speech to specific letters that we put together to make words. And then we can develop the skills to be able to read. This isn't something our brain was initially designed to do, but it's an area that we repurpose to be able to give us this ability to read. So speaking is really the tip of the iceberg here, but it's a really important tip when it comes to learning to read. When you combine that with alphabet knowledge, which I'll discuss in my next video, you'll see how these two skills form those foundational layers when it comes to learning to read. So like I've said, you usually don't have to teach your child how to talk, but there are so many things that you can do to help them along this process of acquiring spoken language by immersing them in a language-rich environment. The number one tip here, perhaps somewhat unsurprisingly, is read aloud to them. This is something that you can do from day one, and it's something that should continue all the way through childhood. Even once they've already learned how to read, you should still be reading aloud to them. There are so many benefits involved in reading aloud. When you read to them, you're not just sharing a nice moment together. You're showing them how our language sounds. You're modeling fluent reading. You're showing them how words go together in sentences in particular orders to make meaning. You're doing so many things with your child and helping them in so many ways just by reading a book together. The next thing you can do is talk to them. Even before they've learned to be able to speak, narrate to them what you're doing in your everyday life. But when you talk to them, make sure you're talking in natural language. Don't speak about yourself in the third person. Don't say, "Mom's just having a coffee right now." You say, "I'm just having a coffee right now." Model how our language should sound so that they don't get confused. Another thing you can do is sing songs together. This is a really fun and engaging way to help build oral language skills, and it doesn't feel like teaching. Whether it's at home or in the car, it's just a fun way to help build and stretch their vocabulary while singing songs that they enjoy. The key thing here is to saturate them in spoken language so that they can be immersed in it. It's going to help them to pick up this biologically primary skill quicker. And the best thing is, a lot of this can all be done through play, which makes it so much more enjoyable while still knowing that you're helping your child tremendously. All right, now for some hot tips from me. All right, this is something I do instinctively as a teacher, but it's something that you can do with your child as well. When your child's just starting to learn how to speak and they're attempting a word, but they may say it incorrectly, it's so much more important to break that word down into its sounds for a shorter word or its syllables for a longer word to help them to be able to say it, rather than just repeating the word ad nauseum and hoping they pick it up. So for example, if they're trying to say the word sheep, you're going to break it into sh, e, p, sheep, so to help them hear those individual sounds in the word. Then for a longer word like butterfly, you might say butterfly, butterfly, breaking it into the syllables. By doing this, you're drawing their attention to the individual sounds within words or syllables within words, which is helping to build a really important foundation of phonemic awareness for later. So you're not only just helping them with their articulation now so that they can say the word they want to say, you're actually helping to build a really important skill that they're going to need when they're reading later on. My next tip is when it comes to speaking in sentences. Now, if your child is trying to say a sentence, but they've said it somewhat imperfectly, but you know what they were trying to say, you want to try and say that sentence back to them correctly. Model the articulation, how it should have sounded, so that they know what they should have said and they can hear it. And that's going to give them the opportunity to be able to learn that, to be able to repeat it back to you next time. So say, for example, your child says, "Go see Nonna." You want to pop that into a proper sentence. You say, yes, I want to go and see Nonna now. They know that you know what they said, and then you're also helping them to learn that that's what they should have said, and that's how we put those words together in order to make a sentence. This is one of those small things that can make a really big long-term difference. Okay, that's it for spoken language. Next time, we're going to go into alphabet knowledge, which is really where reading starts to become more tangible and practical. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video when it drops. And remember, I've summarized this all for you in a downloadable cheat sheet that you can see in the description. And that's a wrap.